Andy, I remember seeing you in a play on Broadway before we did Weekend at Bernie's. It was a war play, a Vietnam play.
Oh yeah, The Boys of Winter. Yeah.
God, you were so brilliant. I was so impressed.
That wasn't one of the ones the performances where I was naked, was it?
No, you just decided.
You
just decided I'm going to do this show completely in the nude.
Welcome, friends and fans, to another episode of GalaxyCon Live, where we are bringing the convention experience directly to you. And today, we are going back to the heydays of Hampton Islands in the idealized 1980s with the amazingly talented cast of Weekend at Bernie's. Our first guest is an actor, writer, and director whose body of work in front of and behind the camera includes Pretty in Pink, St. Elmo's Fire, The Blacklist, and Orange is the New Black. Today, he joins us to discuss the role of Layabout Larry Wilson. Please welcome Andrew McCarthy.
Hey.
Oh, hey, we got Jonathan, too. All right, well, he is an actor whose credits include Brighton Beach Memoirs, Death Becomes Her, and Robodog Airborne. I'm a friend of Tony, the director, so I gotta plug that. So today joins us to discuss the role of Ill at Ease Richard Parker. Please welcome Jonathan Silverman.
I lost you for a second. I'm sure you said something brilliant, and thanks for the intro, but I don't know what you said.
It's all right. I sung your praises, sir. So, gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. How are you all doing?
Yeah, great. How you doing? Where are you?
I'm in Orlando, Florida.
Oh, okay. Johnny, where are you?
I am not in Orlando, Florida. I'm in Los Angeles, California.
All right. I'm upstate New York.
Ooh,
where upstate? Oh, let's not talk about that.
It's very cold where I am.
Very up.
It's mild here. I'll leave it at that. I don't want to give you sun envy. So, well, gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. Like I said,
can we just say what happened to Terry? This is just like when we were filming when he's like, "I'm sick, I can't shoot today. Get my stuntman to do it." Yeah,
nothing has changed. 30 years later.
Yeah, the stuntman did quite a lot, including he took a couple of broken ribs for him, as I recall.
He did. Yeah, the stuntman
got busted up.
Was actually great. So he did a lot of Terry's work.
Well, we'll tell you what, real quick before I go into the Bernie stuff, I had a couple questions about your individual career, if it's okay with you. Jonathan, you have had a really interesting career with Neil Simon and his work on stage and on screen. Just what's the best part of being a part of that legacy?
Yeah, Mr. Simon was awfully good to me. He gave me my first break and kept me gainfully employed for many years after. It was fascinating watching him work. I mean, his nickname was Doc Simon, and it was because he was a script doctor, and the things he would do, and just the process of him making things better. You would actually sometimes see him counting the beats and the rhythms on his fingertips as he was scratching out some new dialogue, and it was almost like a comedy iambic pentameter. And anyway, he taught me a lot, and he was very good to me, and his entire team of directors and producers just taught me everything, and made me into the man I am today.
And I would say good work and created a good man. And you're right about Neil Simon. I love hearing the stories about him in an early run of his play that he'd say, "Oh no, I won't shut up, tell me about it." But he would sneak in and be all the way in the back, biting his nails, hoping that. And yeah, you're right. He identified that comedy is that rhythm, the beats, and So, and absolutely great performances across the board.
Thanks.
You're very welcome.
I think of it when there's a show I worked when I was doing Orange is the New Black, directing it in the office that we had. There was the poster for Brighton Beach Memoirs.
Oh, really?
Farewell. So every day I would coming in and out of work, I'd pass your picture, Johnny. There's Johnny every day.
Sorry, Andy. If it makes you feel better, I have like a lot of photos and posters of you just all over my house.
Well, I know you have my posters in your bedroom. I know.
Well, who wouldn't want to? I mean, really.
Right.
Come on. So, and Andrew, of course, you've had an absolutely stellar career, and I think you have a memoir coming out, kind of encapsulating it from your point of view. Tell us about Brett, which, by the way, is available for pre-order right now at GalaxyCon.com.
Yeah, it's a book. I finally thought I should sit down and figure out what the hell happened back in the Brat Pack days. So I wrote a book about it. Yeah.
Well, very nice.
Anyway.
Are there any recollections from my personal favorite of your work? And I hope this isn't improper, but I adore Heaven Help Us. I think it's a very undervalued.
That's my favorite movie of that period too. That's my favorite one too. Yeah.
All right.
I think that's a really good movie. And yeah, I talk about that a lot because that was the second movie I ever did, and that was real sort of changed my world. That movie, it made me realize that I was actually going to do this for a living. You know, the first movie I got a movie called Class, and it was sort of like winning the lottery, and I just sort of went and did it in a blur. But the second movie, Heaven Help Us, was sort of like the real deal for me, and that changed my life.
Class put you in ladies' underwear and some other interesting things. But yeah, Heaven Help Us. I
got to make love with Jacqueline Bisset in an elevator in Class. So that
yes, you did. Yeah, yes, you did. Yes, you did. And I agree. Heaven Help Us. Just I was at that right age at the time when it rolled over on home box office, as it used to be known as, and I fell in love with it. And it's one of those movies that I throw at people. It's like, I'm bored. You ever seen this? Let's watch it. And they're all like, how come? Yeah.
How come I never heard of this movie? Yeah.
yeah. Well, you know, I think the critics at the time were critics. You know, as I say it, you know, critics are one thing, and the rest of us Earthlings like different things. So. And speaking of people who like different things, let's get to Bernie's. I would love to hear how Bernie's, the first one, evolved for you guys. What was it like going through the casting process?
Johnny?
Yeah. I'm not quite sure how Andrew jumped on board, but I'm pretty sure it was a much easier process than how I got the part. I had to audition quite a lot. I think I'm still auditioning for that movie. But once it got towards the deadline, they had narrowed it down at the time, and this is again before Andrew had been a part of it. They had narrowed it down to 2 actors, and they weren't sure which one of us would play Richard and which would play Larry. And strangely enough, it was me and John Cryer, who was Andrew's, co-star in Pretty in Pink, and so we screen tested both roles, and some time had gone by, and I'm sure John was wondering the same thing I was like, well, what's happening? Are we both going to do this? Or neither one of us going to do this? And I believe the movie was offered to Andrew, and he had his choice of roles. And I think we all assumed he was going to take the shy romantic lead. And he said, screw this. I want to play the bombastic idiot. And then luckily they
bombastic idiot. Bombastic idiot. Wait. But I mean, they asked me when they did ask me to play, I got it. Now, my memory of it is that they asked me to play Jonathan's part. And I said, I want to play the jerk, who's not bombastic, thank you. But I didn't get the jerk. And so I said, I'd like to play the jerk. And they were like, really? Yeah, he's just like me. And so Ted, our director, was yeah, okay. Yeah. So, and then I didn't know John Cryer was up for that. Would have been.
He's still waiting for the call. It may.
Yeah, he did all right.
Yeah.
Who knew he'd play a comic book villain as well as he's done with Lex Luthor? So hey, absolutely. So he's done all right.
John has done just fine. There's no need to worry about John. I think he did a TV show that made him a few dollars.
A little bit. So he's good. And and it was a little bit of a departure for the director as well too. I mean, he had, and not just First Blood either. I mean, North Dallas 40 and everything else. That's
a good movie, isn't it? North Dallas 40.
Yeah.
I don't think Ted ever did a comedy, did he? Is this the only comedy Ted ever did?
I think his first movie, I'd call it a comedy, the Richard Dreyfuss movie.
Teddy Kravitz?
Yeah, but it was sort of a dramatic comedy. But yeah, he certainly wasn't known for his funny bone. So we were all kind of scared. It's like the dude from Rambo is directing us in this dark comedy about a dead guy. What are we getting into?
And he directed just like Rambo.
Yeah, he kind of did. God bless him. But you didn't want to get on Ted's bad side. One of the nicest, smartest, loveliest men away from a film set. But then you put him in front of a crew, and wow, he's a scary individual, but a great filmmaker.
Andrew, did you learn any nascent directing philosophies from him at the time?
Well, I learned how to throw the 80s microphone into the ocean, how to kick cameras off their stand. No, Ted's a great guy. And Ted let me direct for the first time, actually. He has a cameo in the movie playing Jonathan's father.
That's right.
And so I directed him in that, which was my first time directing. So that was that was fun.
A star was born at that moment.
Yeah.
We all knew it.
And I remember Johnny and I were doing some scene in Bernie's house late, and it was late at night. We had a bunch of night shoots. And so late at night, we did some scene. I can't remember what it was. I think it was cut, actually. And we tried to do stuff. It wasn't funny. And Ted just sat there like a big lump. At 3 a.m, went, cut, not funny, do it again. And that was his direction to us. So, do you remember that, Johnny?
Yes, there was a lot of that.
There was a lot of that.
Andy and I and Terry would be working, so hard trying to make gold out of, the same joke over and over again. And the crew would be laughing, and Ted would just sort of sit there.
Not funny.
Like, well, I mean, if this is all you got, I guess we could move on to the next scene. All right.
This is the challenge about doing comedy and feature everything else too. It's like you gotta hit that again and again and again and again, and yeah. So that's.
We honestly didn't know during a lot of that film if what we were doing was funny. I mean,
we thought it was funny, but that's often a kiss and
but
death.
that's us. Yeah, exactly. But our
yeah.
our audience is going to respond to this guy who dies on page 20, and we just do these brutal things to his what's left of his body, of his corpse. But by the time the movie came out and people were laughing, and somebody made some money, and they said, let's do a sequel to it, which I thought was the dumbest idea ever. But man, we had fun on that sequel, and ironically, the sequel wasn't very funny. But the making of it was a damn good time.
You guys got to work with Barry Bostwick, who's a good friend of ours here at GalaxyCon. So you had that at least.
We had a lot of Barry Bostwick. Yeah, lovely man.
What was the best? What was the most fun thing that happened on either of the sets for you? Either part 1 or part 2.
Andy, you got anything?
You go, Johnny.
Most fun. What was most fun, and most of that never even made the movie. But the first 2 weeks of filming, we shot in Manhattan, which you don't often get a chance to do. So usually, if you're shooting in New York, you're shooting, in Queens or just some other borough far away. But to be able to shoot in Central Park, to be able to shoot, in Soho, it was a real treat. And friends and family would show up. And but man, the sequence in the final product went really quick.
I'd say the same thing. Shooting in New York was really fun. At that point, up to that point, there wasn't a lot of filming in New York. There's a lot now. And to shoot there's a funny bit in Central Park where I remember we were walking through, and by the little pond where they do the electric sailboats, and there was some kid, we just shoved him into the water and stuff like that. We got caught. And there's this scene on the rooftop where we were like all tar. The tar was melting on us, and we were sitting in that little that tub. Shooting in New York was a lot of fun. Yeah.
And I thought that was kind of a very honest representation of living in New York at the time. Just like the guys on the roof with the plastic tub, it's like living in the cheapest they could. And meanwhile, you got Lomax, who's this archetype of the 80s ideal of the guy who's making it and everything else. And that's why I often refer to Bernie's it is a time capsule of the 80s. It really is.
It's very much an 80s movie for sure.
Yeah.
You can't imagine a movie would ever be made now.
No,
not this one.
Although I still get a lot of people, you must too, Johnny, going, when's the third one coming out? And I'm like, the body smells, dude. We're not making the third one. Although, funny idea. People, Johnny, coming up with a third one.
Hey, if the script's good, play ball, So anyway,
I thought the boat sequence at the end when we're dragging him around is also quite fun to do. I remember doing it. I thought when we were doing that, I thought this should be pretty funny. When we're dragging him behind us and they get hitting the buoys, and we're like, "You hear something, Richard?"
Yeah, we shot after we left New York. After the first few weeks, we moved camp, and we were in Wilmington, North Carolina, and not too much was being filmed in North Carolina at that point.
Yeah.
But we learned a lot, and the various locals learned a lot. Mostly what not to do. But we had some good times. But that whole water sequence was rough. I don't remember too much of it, but I remember we were out there for weeks, just weeks. And our cinematographer was this lovely but very peculiar perfectionist. And if the clouds weren't a certain way and they weren't matching properly, we would just be floating for hours, sometimes days, without filming anything. And we'd be in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and we'd have to, come back without having shot anything. That's all I got.
No. That's absolutely fair. Well, if Terry could have joined us, I would have given him absolutely props he deserves for just doing all this. If anything, for the scene when Jonathan, you're the beach scene, and he rolls up and the seawater is rolling over him and his eyes are wide open and the seawater is rolling over his open eyes. I can't imagine that was easy.
He did some good stuff. He really let us use and abuse him, and he was very game. But yeah, he did get hurt quite a bit. I think towards the end he was on so many painkillers that we had to let him know what we were shooting. But that could have been any 80s film.
That could have been Terry on any day. I do remember going over to his condo, kind of like knocking on the door, going, "Terry,
you alive
in there?" And he's just opening the door, just like, Andy, hey.
At least he didn't have any lines to memorize. Can you imagine if he had to actually speak?
At that point.
Wow.
True. And Don, a great character actor I admired
Don
for
Calfa.
So long. Yeah, he really had a lot of fun in that role as well.
Oh, he was great in that. He just captured the whole stupidity of that movie.
Right?
With his nascent disguises and trying to be all slick and get wheeled away at the end. So brilliant. Absolutely. Yeah. And again, so as a fan of this movie, just thank you guys. Thank you guys for being a part of it. Thank you for the performances, because they're really on point. And we're here talking about it all these years later, so I'm not the only one who likes it. And you know what else does? Our audience, because we have questions, and let's go ahead and roll our first one. And this is going to come from Ryan, and they want to know, do you have any mentors who inspired you to pursue your career in acting? And I'll expand this out to directing or anything else.
Andy?
Yeah. That's it. The whole idea of mentorship is an interesting thing. I didn't have one in acting. What I had when I was acting was I had one teacher that believed in me, because I went to school for acting at NYU, and I was in school for a couple of years till they kicked me out. And I was not the guy in the class who was voted most likely to be in the movies first, but I had one teacher that believed in me, and that was sort of enough. All you need is one. And it was, I clung to everything she said, and she said, you should not quit. And she changed my life, so hats off to teachers. I said I never had a teacher before that in high school or anywhere that I ever connected with. So when that happened to me, that was a big deal in my life.
Right on.
Yeah, teachers hated me and told me not to pursue this. I think I should have listened to them. I think I got particular. My whole career I've been pretty lucky, but I think in like one in back-to-back moment of working, I had the pleasure of starring alongside Jack Lemmon and John Lithgow, just in back-to-back separate movies, and they definitely were my inspiration going forward, to be that brilliant and that talented, certainly, but just to be that nice and to be that kind to everyone on set, and to take the work that they do so seriously, and to be that consistent and good. So they were certainly inspirational. I still use them as inspiration whenever I'm either confused, feeling down, not knowing what to do going forward on a particular scene. So yeah, that would answer that question from Ryan about an hour ago. Sorry.
I played golf once with Jack Lemmon, and it was like playing golf with Jack Lemmon. No, I mean he was just acting just like Jack Lemmon.
Yeah, how about that?
Green and
Yeah.
It was so I couldn't concentrate at all.
Nice. Ryan, thank you. Wonderful
Thank you,
question to start
Ryan.
us off with. And what do we have next? And this comes from Claire. What is your favorite project you have worked on?
Johnny?
I mean, you're supposed to say the last one or the current one.
Are you enjoying Good Girls, by the way? Johnny and I
am
acted on
loving
the show Good Girls, which I've directed. I was supposed to be directing Johnny this week, I think. But
right at this moment. You should have been.
Wow.
How are you enjoying that?
I am loving it so much, and I have a hello to you. Just yesterday, I told her that I'm going to be seeing you on this GalaxyCon. Christina Hendricks is just mad about you. Just thinks you're just the greatest human and director, and she's so sad that you're not directing this particular episode. But yeah, I joined the cast of season 4, Good Girls, which premieres tomorrow. As a matter of fact, I even sent Andrew a little trailer that's running on Twitter, and Andrew not only is one of the directors on the show, but he plays a part. He plays a killer, actually. I guess the sort of in the Don Calfa cool.
He's my role model for this part. Like, what would Don do here? Yeah.
So in this I don't know, in this 90-second trailer, there's a number of moments of Andrew and of me doing our thing. So I'm just wondering if people watching it are thinking, is this finally the third Weekend at Bernie's? Are they back together again? But we have no moments together. That would have been a little odd.
That's all good. Andrew, how about you?
Projects. I have to say, I love doing Bernie. I thought Bernie was great. I thought Bernie was a lot of fun to do. There was a movie I did in France years ago that I liked doing that no one ever saw, called Quiet Days in Clichy. But I tend to sort of put them aside pretty quickly when I'm done with them. While I'm doing them, they get my full attention. Then I sort of don't. They're only brought up when people sort of bring them up. I don't spend a lot of time kind of thinking about them.
Fair. Fair. Is there something directorially that you feel?
Well, I love doing particularly at the beginning of Orange is the New Black. That was really interesting because that was you felt like you were doing something that hadn't been done before. So that was quite exciting to do that at the beginning of that. And then, of course, it becomes successful, and then it becomes itself. But when it was starting, that felt very exciting to do because it just felt like that felt new.
Yeah, and you would not be wrong. So, indeed. Claire, thank you. That was a great one. What do we have next? And this comes from Adrienne. Ooh, do you have a favorite book?
Well, my new favorite book is dropping May 11th, and it's called Brat.
Really? What's it about?
And I think he's going to grab it right now.
Here it is, Johnny. I'm sure you don't have your copy handy, so I happen to have mine.
Andy, is there some Weekend at Bernie's chapters in it?
There is a lot of Weekend at Bernie's chatter in there.
Should I be afraid?
No, you come out.
I'm okay. All right, awesome. Thank you.
There were people, I have to be honest. There were a few people I sent the stuff to, and are you okay if I say this about you? And everyone was fine, except one person just never got back to me. So I figured, they must be fine.
Wow.
Well, it's gonna be a monster success, Andy. Number 1 on the Times bestseller list. Go get him.
Okay.
I have a toddler. I'm in my mid-50s, and I finally joined the ranks of parenthood. So honestly, every book in my bookcase right now is parenting stuff. That's pretty much all I read at the moment. But favorite books, honestly, it was probably one of the first books I remember reading, start to finish as a kid. It's probably still my favorite book, Catcher in the Rye.
There's a line I just heard yesterday about parenting, Johnny, that it said, you don't realize until you become a parent that you're really not a very nice person.
So true.
So how old is your kid now?
She's 3.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we're pretty tired people.
The fun years when they can run around on their own power.
Yours are how old now, Andy?
18, 14, and 7.
Wow, my God. Wow.
This is what happens.
Wow.
Fun stuff. So, Andrew, how about you? Favorite book?
Favorite book? My favorite book's probably by a Canadian author called Alistair MacLeod called No Great Mischief. I also like love a book called Stoner by John Williams. Those would probably be, and I reread both those over the pandemic, and I realized why I love them so much. Yeah.
Nice.
And of course,
Right.
favorite nonfiction book.
You got to go into a little bit about when you picked up a second career as a travel writer.
When I thought of that before when you were talking about mentors, I did have a mentor for the first time in my life when I was travel writing. I met a fellow who was an editor at National Geographic Traveler magazine, and he encouraged me to write. And I traveled a lot, and it changed my life. Traveling, and I thought I was interested in travel writing, and I met him at a party at a function. This guy named Keith Bellows, and I said, "You ought to let me write for your magazine." He said, "You're an actor, dude." I was like, "Yeah, I'm an actor, but I can tell a story. That's what I've been doing for 25 years." So he ended up letting me eventually. I said, "Look, if it doesn't work out, you don't have to pay me." And he said, "That I can live with." And so anyway, I started writing travel, and something I got very into for 10, 15 years, and I still love to do, although no one gets to travel anymore right now. But that was real invigorating for me. Travel writing in the same way that acting was when I first started. I found a real passion for it and so that's what segued me into writing books and stuff was the travel writing initially. So that was and then however wonderful travel writing is, though, one doesn't put 3 kids through private school on travel writing. So I became a television director.
The mother of invention. So, Adrienne, thank you. Wonderful question. What do we have next? And from Andre, as an actor, what has been your greatest challenge and greatest accomplishment? So this could be maybe just a particular scene in something, or even just an audition or something like that.
These are really intense questions.
Well, they're actually thoughtful.
Very.
I'm not cut out for that kind of thing.
I suppose anytime I do a play, that's usually my biggest challenge, and hopefully a greatest accomplishment if we don't mess it up. I started my career doing theater in New York, and well, no one has done theater in the last year or so, but that's always the most rewarding, the most terrifying, the most enjoyable. I don't have a directing career anywhere near as accomplished as Mr. McCarthy, but I have directed a few movies and a few episodes of television, and that's terribly exciting and exhausting too. And I think anytime you could actually get your day in and somehow finish a project is a heck of an accomplishment on that end. And I think in all of the films and TV stuff I've done as a director, I've had to act in it too, and that's just near impossible. I sort of tend to not even care or pay attention to what I'm doing as an actor, which sometimes, if you've seen some of my movies, but wearing both hats, I think is probably the most.
Whenever I've acted and directed, I too give no thought to my acting. And I find I'm exactly the same as when I do all this preparation. So I don't know what that says.
Right.
Yeah. I'd say the biggest, I always find the difference between acting and directing. Acting, people ask me what's the difference. I find acting causes me a certain amount of anxiety, and directing is stressful. And between and I always say, if I'm ever doing a play, which I haven't done in about 9 years, the first day a play is going to go up, oh my God, I'm surprised I haven't had a heart attack. I always swear to myself, I will never do a play again. I will never do this again. This is so horrible. I would never put myself through this again. Why would I, and it's a horrific sort of day of anxiety. And then you go on, you survive, and you kind of go, oh, that was kind of great. Let's do that again, But I'd say there's a great sense of accomplishment when you sort of get through play. Because movies or TV are different. It's just sort of like each day you just sort of chip away, and there isn't that sense of accomplishment, or something that you've done together. You're just sort of, in a very real way, sort of making the donuts,
I remember, Andy, I remember seeing you in a play on Broadway before we did Weekend at Bernie's. It was a war play, a Vietnam play.
Oh yeah, The Boys of Winter. Yeah.
God, you were so brilliant. I was so impressed.
That wasn't one of the ones the performances where I was naked, was it?
No, you just decided.
You
just decided I'm going to do this show completely in the nude.
No, there was that play in the early previews. I used to have to it was a play about Vietnam where these 6 or 8 guys were like in the jungle somewhere, and at the end, my character climbs this tree and strips off his clothes and like gets shot and dies naked on the stage, and it was just humiliating. And luckily, they cut it in preview. But there were a few
rewrites
people wwho got to see me naked on stage, which no one has tried to ever talk about again.
Yeah, that's a very interesting thing, though, what you said about plays. A friend of mine said once, plays conclude, movies and television cease. Because your project, you cease to it, and then it goes on to another stage, whether it's the editing, post-production, or whatever, too. But you know when the play is done, oh, this closing night, let's go out on a doozy. So, and Andre, yeah, and Andre, thank you, great question. This comes from Garland. Any fun behind-the-scenes stories you can share?
See, this is one you have, when they're happening, you should always go, oh, this is one of the anecdotes I can talk about when I'm on the show. Because everybody always says, give me a funny story from the set. And I always go, Johnny, you must have one, though.
Speaking of being naked, I remember it wasn't so funny at the time, but I remember it was one of the days we were shooting Weekend at Bernie's boat sequence stuff, the water skiing sequence stuff, and we were waiting, and Andrew and I were kind of just by ourselves in our little boat. I don't even know if Terry was behind us. I think they might have just been shooting, dialogue with me and Andy, and then there was a follow boat, a big pontoon boat with the camera crew and everyone else, and we would just sort of be waiting there and bobbing and weaving on the water, and there wouldn't be any food. Maybe we had some water. But I had to pee, and when you're
really making it sound grueling here, John.
Well, sorry. And then when we did have to relieve ourselves, we just kind of went into the ocean. But being that we had to have dry clothes on for continuity, because at any particular moment the director of photography would say, "Okay, we're shooting again," we would just pee off the side of the boat. And so I had to go, and I went to the opposite end of where the other crew members were in their boats, and I peed, and I was just sort of minding my own business, doing what I was doing, and then before I finished, I realized Andy was right behind me, sort of watching me, and the entire crew had taken their boat and were filming me. And in those days, we would all gather the night after, and we would watch the dailies. And so that particular night, we watched me pee off the side of a boat. Hilarious.
I have no recollection of this.
Thank you.
Memory is a beautiful thing. It's self-preservation.
Yeah. It was also sunstroke, too. We were out there for so long. I don't think sunscreen was invented back in 1988, so we had other problems.
Oh, my. So Andrew said, no. So, yeah, all right. Keep going. Andrew,
that's it.
Andrew, you got one?
I got nothing to add to that. I can't talk. Yeah.
True. Yeah, getting caught on the side. I will say, costume-wise, Andrew, did you have any input in your character's sartorial style, or was that just all your
costume-wise? My entire wardrobe, in fact, my entire character was based on a friend of mine who I basically like, what would Eddie do if he were not to use his brain for 1 second? And that's what I based him on, behavior on. And costume-wise, I just based it completely on my friend. The purple high tops, the big baggy shorts, and the Hawaiian shirts. It was all totally exactly my friend Eddie. Like it was, and yeah. And then when Ted saw it, he goes, "What is this? This is gonna be great, Ted. This is what he looks like." He's like, "Okay." And he let me do it, which is great. I remember we rehearsed for a bit in New York, which is rare in a movie that you get to rehearse. Remember that, Johnny? I remember at the end of one of the days, Ted did say to me, he just said, "This guy's a real lovable jerk. I like him." And that made me feel that I felt quite confident after that. But yeah, wardrobe was all from my friend Eddie, who was actually just a friend of mine from New York in the Village.
Fair. It was because visually, just it's a great dichotomy between both your characters. You know, it's just like, okay, it totally works. And it said, "Hey, this is me." So, and Garland, thank you, great question. And what do we have next? This comes from Dylan. Do you have any advice for actors or aspiring actors to be?
Wow, you know, the world has changed so much since the last time I might have been asked this question. I mean, at this point, obviously, you just kind of have to wait for another few weeks or months or who knows how much longer. But as long as you have passion, and if you know this is what you want to do, there's a lot of heartache. There's a lot of rejection. Even when you attain a certain level of success, there's a lot of rejection. So you have to have some thick skin, and then you also have to somehow maintain your artistic integrity. But if you love it, if you know this is what you want to do, then just jump in and run as fast as you can, and keep fooling them, and hopefully good things will happen.
I think in many ways, though, it's easier in a certain sense. It's not easier, but there's more direct access now. Everyone is on Twitter or Instagram or whatever, and you can contact people directly in a certain way, or you can create your own content now in a very real way. When we were starting and things, you just had to wait for someone to give you a chance to do something. And now people creating content and creating their own careers out of in whatever format, whether they become influencers, on Instagram or on YouTube stuff, or I find people just go create content or starting careers and I'm all for that. I think that's great, because that's one of the things I started loving about writing when I started writing is I didn't have to wait for anybody to give me permission to go do it. I think just start creating content and putting it out there. And I think, what Johnny was saying about having a thick skin, it's one of the reasons I segued out of acting less and less, because the longer I was in it, the more I found the rejection upsetting. You would think it would be the other way. The longer you did it, you just sort of grow immune to it. I found it more upsetting as I went on. So I just sort of said, I'm not doing that anymore. Right. But I do think people out there creating content is, things get seen.
Very much so. Yeah, we've had this come up with people will ask our voice actors the same thing, and it all comes back to anybody nowadays is living in a miraculous age of communications and platforms. I mean, people are becoming stars off of TikTok and Twitch.
Oh people on
YouTube.
TikTok are just like huge, and my daughter, I think it's great.
Yeah, so it's
it's one of the things you have to do. If you have to act, then you should try it. People often say, well, if there's anything else you can do, you should do it. But fine, but if you have that in you to want to do that, I think you should not listen to anybody and go do it, because you will hate if you don't later. You'll always go, I wanted to do that, and I did. I have had people come up to me, you must have, Johnny, go, I wanted to be an actor, but I didn't. My parents wanted me to go to med school or whatever, and great, that's all fine. But I think it's your life, and if that's where you feel and you feel it, go for it. Everything's hard. I've been here since day one. The first thing I ever heard in show business was how hard it was and how hard it is. And it's different now. You should have been here 5 years ago. Same crap you hear for 40 years. And it is hard. Of course it's hard. Everything's hard,
And I always end with the advice too, that it's a marathon. It's not a sprint.
That's very true.
So Dylan, absolutely best of luck to you, and hopefully we'll host you here on GalaxyCon Live someday. And what do we have next? From Michael, what are some of the most interesting places you've traveled for your career?
Wow. Well, besides Wilmington, North Carolina, I've been, as I'm sure Andrew had, I've been lucky enough to and Australia, and it's always exciting to pack up a couple of suitcases and leave and go on an adventure. My wife is a dynamite human being and a terrific actress. Her name is Jennifer Finnegan, and she stars on a new, soon to be aired television show. And we spent 6 months during the height of the pandemic, living in a little lobster fishing village in Nova Scotia. And the show actually got picked up for a second season, so we're going back in a couple of months. So you just never know. I mean, you could try and you plot and think about where you're going to spend your life, and at this point, where your kids are going to go to school, and then we're gypsies, and off we go. And but yeah, we've been able to really see the world. Andy,
that is one of the best things, and the most difficult things. Is just like the call comes, phone rings, and you're like, okay, I'm going to Nova Scotia Tuesday, you know, and that can be wonderful and exciting, you know. Yeah, I mean, I've in a couple of my careers, I've gotten to travel a lot, particularly as a travel writer. I mean, I love, you know, one of my favorite places are remote places, you know, the Sahara Desert or Patagonia, or, you know, but then again, I love cities, you know, I love Calcutta. I thought Calcutta was a fantastic place. And as Audrey Hepburn said, Paris is always a good idea. But going and filming on location is always super exciting. I mean, I remember having one of the best times of my life in Lawrence, Kansas for 12 weeks. No, I thought Kansas was great, and I would never have spent 12 weeks in Lawrence, Kansas, you know? So that is one of the sort of perks of the job for sure, is locations and per diem.
Per diem is nice. For those of you watching at home wondering what we're talking about,
it's the cash they give you.
Yeah, here, this is money for your food and whatever else you need, and it's usually in cash, in the currency.
It used to be. It's not really anymore. Now they just sort of mail it.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, it's like, where did my money go? And, you're waiting for you at home. But it used to be you'd have like just a stack of cash in whatever small town you might be in.
I might have thought
they give you spend this. There's nothing to buy here. There's nothing to eat here. But you'd have some cash.
Indeed, yes. Michael, thank you. Fun one. I think we have time for one more, so let's see if we can roll out on a really good one. And this comes from Jeffrey. What is your favorite line or quote from a character you have played?
Wow. These are very, very interesting questions. I might need a second. Andy, you got something off the top of your head?
I always like that line in St. Elmo's Fire when my guy says, when someone says, "How you doing?" And I say, "Me? Oh, you know, it ain't easy being me." I love that line.
I'd probably have to say one of the Neil Simon projects I did, because all those lines are just so good and so juicy. And I remember seeing one of the plays with my dad, and then I got to do the play a few months later.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and then my dad and I, before I even got the job, we would exchange, you know, we would just be on the telephone and we'd say some of the lines to each other. So then I got to say those lines and you know, be paid hundreds of dollars for them. But yeah, I don't think I have one particular line that sort of encompasses my my thoughts on being a human being. But man, it's fun. It's fun to revisit. Oftentimes, like Andy said, I mean, you do a job, you do a movie, you do a play, and you spend 24 hours a day just focusing on what you're saying and what you're doing, and then your brain only has so much room because you've got to memorize a whole new, you know, chunk of dialogue for the next day. So I don't remember some of the dialogue until somebody starts quoting the lines to me, and I thought, that sounds familiar. What's that from? That's something I said.
I did like a line I said in Weekend at Bernie's when we're dragging him around in the boat and all that, and we pull him up, and I'm like, "Oh shit!" And you're like, "What?" And I go, "He lost my sunglasses."
I think most of the dialogue, and God bless Robert Klane, who wrote the screenplay for both films. I think most of the memorable dialogue that came out of your mouth actually came out of your head. I mean,
you did just make up a lot.
You improv'd almost all of those great silly lines. So kudos to you.
I remember the Monopoly scene. There was no Monopoly in that. It was just me sitting outside with Bernie, and some pretty women walk by, and we sort of both wave at them. And I said, "Oh, I have nothing to do here." So I just brought a Monopoly set to work and set up a whole game and just played Monopoly with Bernie. And then we strung up the thing on his arm so his arm would wave. Yeah. And all that. We just kind of made that up at the moment.
Right.
Wow. And that made it into the trailer. That was the clincher that made me see the movie. The hey girls, yeah.
Yeah, hey ladies.
Yeah, right.
It's just so stupid. It just really was.
I do remember.
And your idea is stupider than mine. Let's do your idea.
Right. I do remember after almost every take of something we'd come up with, or you would come up with, and Ted would yell "cut." You would just go, "That was just shameless."
Shameless. And then we stapled his toupee. I don't think that was in the script. I think John's like, let's not staple his. Let's say, wait, he has a toupee. Sure, he does. Let's staple it on his head.
And for some reason, that was cut out of the German version.
What?
Yeah, when I did the background on this, for some reason, the German version of the film, that scene was cut for reasons
What
unexplained.
does that mean? Wow.
Interesting.
Yeah.
There will be no bald actors in this movie.
The toupee is all right, but the stapling is no good.
Okay.
Jonathan, the series debuts when?
Yes, season 4 tomorrow.
Tomorrow
night, NBC, and the show that I do with my wife. I play her husband on the Nova Scotia show too. That is doesn't have an air date yet, but we're shooting season 2 in a couple months. It's going to be called Feudal, and it's awfully good.
Absolutely looking forward to it. And Andrew, the book, obviously. Anything else in the pipeline coming up?
I'm directing my old friend James Spader right now in The Blacklist.
Ooh, very, very nice. Very nice. Again, great show. Absolutely. There's a level to that show that I never expected when I first came on. And I was like, oh, okay, wow, they're getting really dark and really deep. I like it. So
it's pretty dark.
Dark and deep, which was Andy's nickname in high school.
And Andrew, I believe I read there's an audio version of the Brat as well. Is this read by you?
Yes, it is read by me. I just did it last week. Yeah, wow. I made so many mistakes while I was reading that the technician I was doing it with me said, "Did you write this book, dude?" Yeah. But yeah, that'll be at the same time as the book. Well,
awesome.
You can, yeah.
Awesome. I look for it. I think I got the print version myself, but I know many friends, audiophiles, that love their audiobooks, so I will highly recommend it to them. Gentlemen, this has been an absolute delight to serve you today. Thank you again for joining us on the GalaxyCon virtual stage. Thank you to our audience for joining us today, and thank you for those great questions. Hope to see you all again soon. Until then, bye-bye, everyone. Take care, and please keep washing those hands.